Like,
Nice little long fries with slow bacon in it.
we are at the Slave River tour. I'm afraid to go down here.
Day names are given.
Uh-huh.
There is an accolade to the middle name.
Oh.
Whenever the day name brings the accolade.
Uh-huh.
So Amma, there is another accolade. We have another name that is the accolade to Amma.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Alright, so they are here, so we all go to meet them and then we start talking.
Okay.
What happens if the lion doesn't tell his side of the story? He will always be in the dark.
Yeah.
So it's good to be here today to at least learn some parts, to use it and then fix the puzzle that is always in your minds. Back in the days when Ghana used to be Gold Coast, there were so many other empires. We have the Ashanti Empire, the Ahanta Empire, the Akwemu Empire, and several others. And because they were fighting among themselves for territorial gains, Gold Coast back then stretched to part of Togo, Benin, Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, and then Ivory Coast, and even Senegal. During the transatlantic slave trade, all those who were raided, being children and pregnant women, inclusively were placed in chains and shackles, receiving whips, almost naked and barefoot. They had to walk them to the Salaga slave market up north. A renowned historian here in Ghana documented in her book entitled The Indigenous Slavery of Ghana, Akosia Adomapebi. In her book, she stated that among all the slave markets we have in Africa, Ghana alone had close to 63 of those slave markets. We have Salaga, Sampa, Jenen, Karachi, Kumasi, Assin Manso here, Cape Coast Castle, Elmina Castle, all the way to the Christiansburg Castle in Osu, just to mention a few. A British historian, W.E. Ward, also traveled during the era of slave trade. In his travel journal, he made mention in the book entitled The Short History of Ghana that among all these slave markets I've mentioned, Assin Manso and that of the Salaga slave market up north played a major role, and the distance between these two slave markets is over 300 solid miles. Our ancestors were in chains and shackles. They were forced to walk through the jungle. Coming to the south, they met the nature park called the Mole National Park. Back then, Mole was full of wild animals. In order for them to walk freely through the park, the slavers were sacrificing our ancestors to the animals. They were using them as baits. They took them off their chains and shackles, tied them around a tree, gave them multiple whips. The blood that comes out of them were sensed by the animals. And whilst the animals were busy feeding on them, they were able to move the rest out of the park. They succeeded, but lives were lost on that particular nature park. On the journey, they met a river called the Pra River. Because our ancestors from the hinterlands were not exposed to rivers, it became an obstacle. The survival of the fittest made it. The men who had the height and then the strength to cross the river had to pick the children and some of the women on their shoulders to cross. For those who were weak, drowned, and they died, right there they were buried at the bank of the river. On the journey, for the women, they had to go through a lot. Aside being raped by the slave raiders, they had to go through several treatments because they were crying on behalf of their own brothers and sisters. Even though they themselves were also in chains, they were still crying for them. And these people hate to see that because they thought the cry was actually falling on the wild animals. So they had to shut them up. To do that, they use either the stone method or they use the metal mask method. They pick stones a little bit wider than their mouths, force it in there and then tie it around their neck, or they force a bunch of leaves into their mouth and then cover it with a metal mask. That way you are allowed to shed your tears but nobody hears your voice. They eventually got here in Assin, Manso, filthy, hungry and very tired. Here the slavers saw the need for them to take some days off to rest because this is going to be their market. And they did not allow them to rest because they were tired. They knew very well that these people coming from the Cape Coast Castle with their money in their pockets are here for healthy looking slaves. So here they allowed them to rest and they were fed also for them to get some flesh on their bones. In other words, to get enough money out of them. After that, the men who had their hairs bushy and their beards bushy were shaved with a broken bottle. They walked them to the river to take their bath. But before we go to the river, I'll be telling you about these graves. In the ancestral graveyard, we have 3 different graves. Here lies the mortal remain of Madame Crystal from Kingston, Jamaica, an enslaved African. Samuel Carson from New York City, United States. And before I go to the last one, I'll tell you about these 2. They are coming back home here before the year. So, Madame Crystal was a former slave captured from Ghana here. On arrival in Jamaica, she took it upon herself not to feed on anything being fed to them by the British. She went on a hunger strike. But back then, if you are found rebelling against the food, they have a treatment. It's either they force you for you to open your mouth willingly, or they use the chisel and hammer method. Then they'll have to knock your teeth with a chisel and hammer. Put a funnel in there, dish the food into the funnel. With the help of water, they push it down your throat. That way you stay alive for them not to lose their money. But this woman, as African as she was, focused as she was, tried to achieve her aim. So whenever they forced her to eat, she also forced the food out. She died in the process. Her dying wish was that whenever they gain freedom, they should bring back whatever remains of her is left, that they should bring it back home to be buried on their soil. Samuel Carson, on the other hand, happened to be the first African American to rise to the highest rank in the Navy. Yes, I bet you don't know about it. That's because that part of the history was scrapped. They don't want us knowing what we are capable of doing. So this man here, after all he has done for them, he wasn't even given a befitting burial when he died. So before they could be brought back home, the then tourism minister and then the president of Ghana here, the late J.J. Rawlings, traveled to Jamaica. He witnessed a celebration going on. He asked what the celebration was all about. Apparently, slave trade was abolished way back in the year 1804, effectively 1807. So for those in the Caribbean and then Haiti, Barbados and some others started celebrating what they call the Emancipation Day, but not here in Africa. So 1994, that was when we Ghanaians or the Africans realized something like this was actually going on for several years. So he came back home to implement the celebration.
1994?
Yes.
You realized what was going on?
As in the Emancipation celebration.
How long it took them to come home to be able to already bring them back?
So 1994, that was when they realized that it is time for them to celebrate it. It took them 4 years for the first ever emancipation celebration to start. That was in 1998. 1998 saw the return of these two mortal remains. They were then flown in by the Ghana Airways, moved by the sea because they left these continents via the sea. They are right. Their passage was the sea. So if you are bringing them back home, you should take them through the ocean. So they took them through the ocean to the Cape Coast Castle and then Elmina Castle. These two castles have a door there called the Door of No Return. It simply means once our forefathers walk through it, they are never coming back home here, whether dead or alive. It is true that these people went there, only hope to return back home one day, but they never did. In 1998, their remains came back through the back door of the Door of No Return to make it a door of return. To some others, the year of return actually started on that particular day. That was in 1998. So they were brought here on the 31st of July to be buried on their own land and in their own soil so that their souls can finally find peace. The last one, as part of last 2 years celebration, year of return, we were all happy to receive our brothers and sisters back home. So many people were coming. Derek Johnson, AJ Johnson, and a lot of them. The Prime Minister of Barbados decided to come back. On her way, she went to the graveyard where her ancestors were buried. Assumed everything, all the bones that she could find on that particular land was placed in a coffin and then brought back home on the 11th of November to be buried here so that this will serve as a link between the land of Africa and all those who died out there to bring them back home to rest in perfect peace. That's how come we have the third one. If you look on the walls, we have pictures starting from George Ekin. So, down here, we have the river, not river, because we have two different rivers flowing through this. Coming from the other end is the river called the Assin River, and down here is the river we call Nonko Issue. Nonko means slaves. So this is the slave river, or was the slave river back then, where our ancestors took their last ever bath. We have here painted in black because the black signifies the dark ages where our ancestors had to be brought here for them to take their last ever bath. And then right there is the path, the footpath that leads to the river. The non-conscious has its source from this community, up on the mountains. It flows from there, sloping all the way, crossing the road to get to this point. They all meet and they flow side by side to the ocean. When they brought them here as captives, they were not allowed to go to the other side of the river to take their bath because they believe that part of the river flows with the maximum current. And looking at it, the way it's flowing, when it gets to a level, it can take anything on its way. Sometimes it gets to a higher level that we couldn't even go down there to do what we usually come here to do. So whilst our ancestors were in the river, they're taking their bath peacefully, the slavers hate to see that. So they had to cut the bamboo very long enough. With the help of the itchy leaves, they were using that to scrub them in the river. That particular act was giving them cuts on their bodies. Their skins were being bruised. After that, they brought them all out. In the river too, they were with their chains around their ankles. Even a cannonball as heavy as possible was added here to hold them still in the river. So after they have taken their bath, they brought them here for them to dry. Once they were dried up, they apply shea butter or palm oil on their bodies for them to look more shiny and then attractive for the merchants who are coming here with their money to come and purchase them. And because our ancestors were classified as commodities, after buying and selling, there happened a time that some of them were left in the chains. Those who were not tough or those who were skinny were not fit. They were classified as useless commodities. And all the time I cite an example of the groceries. Our groceries are all in the market. When we get there, we try to pick the nicer ones. After we pick the nicer ones, what happens to the leftovers? We'll be stepping down there. You go there as our ancestors, the new generations of our ancestors who lost their lives in the diaspora or wherever they ended up. You are here because your ancestors took their last bath here. When we get down there, you take some of the water in your hands. This way. Look at it and then thank them for how far they have brought you to. From there, we'll be going to this side. We walk down there to the other side. That is where you take your cleansing bath. We call it the Sankofa healing rite. You are back home today and you need to heal yourself by washing your hands, your feet, and if you would like, you can dive into the river and then take your bath to cleanse yourself. We have a purpose of doing that. Once we get to that side, I'll tell you more about it. So now, all we will be doing is that we lose our footwear. We are here to pay homage. Yes, please. Yes. to the other side. Let our mouths be cleansed, our throat be cleansed, so that whenever words are needed, we might be able to speak out for the hearing of others also. Let our thoughts be cleansed, our hearts be cleansed, so that whenever message is being sent through us but by our ancestors, we might be able to deliver them nicely. That's what we are coming to do. But that you will take some time and then meditate. Tell your ancestors why you are here today. And we believe that by this flowing water, the same water in which they took their last bath, these prayers of ours will be heard. So please, let's not waste time. Let us step into the road. Bringing them back. But that particular gadget that was found in the river, the tool that was used to keep them calm in the river, we have it here. Once we get to the side, I'll show it to you so that you understand the side. Please, let's walk forward. Yeah, I'm used to walking this way up and down. Oh, okay, you've gotten something for yourself.
Who the hell will leave child?
Saturday, EFUA.
Saturday, Ama. So Friday,
Friday,
yeah,
F1.
F1.
You don't need to get talking. We'll do it. There's a lot. I don't know. It's gonna be a lot. Y'all want to take some pictures tomorrow?
Check that one.
What we've been waiting for forever. It's not that clear. It is.
Okay,
I'm gonna stay here.
I'm walking on the beach right this second. I cannot
You
wait a
can't
moment.
can't wait no more. I said you can't wait. Oh, but we can't get inside of it though.
No, but Monty said that there was people in there earlier that should be.
Oh, okay. It actually says no swimming between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. So you can get in the water.
Okay.
Well, how do you get down there? Because
From over there or down there somewhere. I was down right there. Because it's an opening. Rollers over there.
okay.
I was about to say the group that they going to be driving on Friday.
Oh, without us, I know. You ain't the only mama that misses their babies. Because you ain't the only mama that misses their babies. She has a 1 and a 3-year-old.
It's your mom. See, I always thought the mama was depending on you, but now I realize you depending on mama.
We depended on each other.
She's looking at y'all just watching this.
Shut up.
Oh, you talking to mom?
Here's my hotel room. Let's go start in the restroom. So nice. This is probably the best hotel I've stayed in so far.